Hey everybody, it's Tim Hinton, the Beast of the Marching Arts. Thank you for being here for this Marching Arts Education webinar. I'm here with Andy Seeley from Hebron High School. Andy, how are you tonight?
Hey, I'm fabulous, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you're here. So everybody, we are excited. We're going to talk about the amazing work that everybody at Hebron is doing, about the amazing fall that they had, that great marching band season. We're not just going to talk about that, but I know that there's a lot of things we want to hear about that. So Andy, first off, before I go into the business, I just want to say right away, congratulations. Everybody's talking about how great the band was. That has to be nice.
It is absolutely nice. It's a great tribute to those kids. I think it's a great tribute to our staff and our parent community and the school. It's really a wonderful accolade and great to live in that moment back during the fall. But, you got to start over. You got to reinvent this thing every year. Got to create a new thing every year. But we're very thankful for that experience. And I'm so grateful for being able to share that journey with the kids and the staff. It was remarkable.
Yeah, it was really remarkable, and we're going to talk about that. And I know that any band director in the country who saw a clip of the band with all that trumpet tonguing and everything, and they're all like, okay, how is that possible? So I think everybody watching, I'm going to try to find out. We'll see what he says. We all know it's just a lot of really good teaching and a lot of really hard work on behalf of those students. But anyway, there might be some more nuggets that we'll get from Andy. So Andy, I already said first thing, congratulations. Everybody was talking about it, and there were people were making comments that were like unprecedented. Like, this is one of the people that have been around like since the 60s, and they're saying like, this is one of the best marching performances I've ever seen ever. And I'm thinking, okay, these are not comments that get thrown around lightly. People were knocked out. So my first question is, at what point did you realize in the season, like, okay, we might have something special going on this season?
Tim, honestly, that's really hard to say in so many ways, because we just approach every season the same way. And we were really doing the same things that we always did in terms of our approach, in terms of our teaching, in terms of our timeline. We were really operating, by and large, the way we traditionally operate. There were some moments early on in the season that we made some decisions from an effect standpoint, especially like in the opening 10 seconds of the show, that, hey, no pre-show, slap them upside the head right now. We're just not going to fool around. The horn comes up and then go for it. That was an intentional decision that we did. And then we really wanted to just kind of, and we always do this, I say we, as marching directors or programming, we're thinking of program and effect and timeline. We want to take the audience on a journey. And yes, we did do that, but everybody else does that too, and they do it great. What we did try to do is, hey, once you get on this trip right here, you need to hang on, because we're not going to let you off the hook for 8 minutes. That was an intentional, purposeful decision. And so about the time we got through with our summer band program and maybe the first couple of football games, we thought, okay, we can really make this work with that approach. And we just kept grinding it out. There's really no miracle on any of that. It's just day in and day out. Do your job at a high level, and have high expectations for your kids and your staff and yourself, and keep grinding.
Okay, that's I like, there's obviously, yes, I totally believe you, and that makes sense to me. And like, we've seen the program perform at a really high level for years now, so it's not like you came out of nowhere, but still there was something special about the design, about the way the students were performing. You talk about this sort of relentlessness of the performance, and the not letting you off the hook. Did that require more of your students? Did they have to be in a little better physical conditioning? Did you guys have to work on their stamina because of that approach?
We didn't work on their stamina any more than usual, honestly. Most of the time, we do a little bit of physical conditioning, especially during the summer. We get out there every day during the summer and do Zumba at really abusive rates of volume and tempo, and to shock the kids out of their summer body, perhaps. that's really not a purposeful decision in terms of shocking them out, but that is how our conditioning program starts. As we get out there first thing in the morning, 7 or 7:30 during the summer part of our band. And, in Texas, we don't start our summer programs really until the last week of July, first week of August. And so we do Zumba out there with them, and kids are real inhibited the first couple of days, and then things just start going off the tracks. Man, those kids love it. They're enjoying it. They're into it. So there is some conditioning in that, but also the physical rehearsal of that show and the tempos involved created their own physical conditioning for certainly everybody. And, we had super good design of the show in terms of what our designers were doing, our music team, and, Mr. Sullivan, our lead designer, which is also our color guard cat. And, they were doing really, really good work throughout all of that. But it was an intense affair. There's some huffing and puffing going on. And we have to talk about breathing like the drum corps do, about cycling that air and trying to process, trying to make sure that we're filled up, not playing beyond what we can control, and that the resonance of the instrument is the priority. So, there's a lot to all of that. But in general, again, we were just doing our job.
Okay, I love it. So, next question I guess I have is, when everything sort of shut down, and there's some people still were doing bands at different levels all around the country, but the interesting conversation everybody had was, I wonder what marching band's going to be like when we sort of get back to it, because we thought, okay, we have all these kids that haven't marched. A lot of people had a lot more beginning or first time marchers, and everybody sort of thought, I wonder if band's going to be struggling. And of course, what happened was everybody was better than they ever were, and it was amazing. Right. So, what did you guys do during that shutdown to sort of keep your band going so that you could be at that level this past fall?
I do think there is something to that. Very much philosophically in how we communicated with our kids' expectations during the shutdown. So I'm talking about the spring of 2020 and the fall of 2020 and the spring of 2021. Number one, we were able to do some form of marching band starting in about September at 10 feet apart and all of this. And so we, in July, went to a Plan B show that was a combination. Actually, it was kind of a throwback, a nostalgia, mainly just a memory trip for me, actually. But anyway, that's not important. We found a program we liked that we could function. And so we created marching band anyway at 6 feet or 10 feet. Literally, we wrote drill for 9 and 10 feet away in the brass and 6 feet minimal in the woodwinds. If you look back at the production from that year, and yeah, it was abbreviated, all that stuff, absolutely. The other thing I think is much more important is the mental attitude about all of that on a part of our kids. We really stressed that the senior class of 2021, their most important job was to set us up for the other side of the pandemic. And we worked as a band mentally and physically, that everything that we were doing during that time was really preparing us for where we wanted to be when we came out of this. That we could not afford to be passive. We could not afford to be a victim of our circumstance, because we're all in it. The world is in it. And we worked very intentionally to do that. And, our school district and our school administration kept the doors open to being able to march a little bit. We did, a little competition in the district, and then the UIL, which is, our governing body, still had a UIL contest in some form, even though there were schools opting out of it. We kept our nose in all of that as long as we could, and really talked the talk about, we need to set our plate up for being on the other side of it. And those of you that are in this band right now, this is the band you have. This is the circumstances and the cards that you have. What are you going to do with the cards that you have in this year? And we're going to come out better in spite of this. We're not going to be a victim of this circumstance.
That's amazing. I love that, and I love that it was so intentional, and that you took such a positive approach. I had a conversation with the Avon staff about their amazing winter that they just had. Everybody, you can find that podcast at the Marching Roundtable on Monday. Absolutely, and it was interesting because I asked them the same question. And they said the same thing, which is like great minds think alike, But they were like, "Well, this is our expectation, and that's still what the expectation is, Like we can't. Why should you let that go down just because we're in these difficult, weird times? Like let's try to keep that." So it sounds like same thing here. Like we still want to be, expect as much of ourselves as we ever did. I love that.
Absolutely. Great thought. Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Okay. So I have a clip that I'm itching to play. So it's only 30 seconds, everybody. I was a part of the broadcast at Box 5 TV, and we this fall at Bands of America events, and they shared 30-second clips with me for some of the commentary I was doing, and for Marching Arts Now, which was a special weekly video show we were doing. So I have this 30-second clip from finals, and it's brief, but it's I want to play it and everybody enjoy. Holy smokes! I mean, come on. I mean, it's so exciting. That sound coming off the field, even on video, is so resonant. It's so amazing. So I guess my first question would be, all right, what are you feeding them? Like is there something special you gave them all at band camp that we all want to know?
I'd love to be able to tell you that there is something like that. And maybe there is, in the sense that we talk and work a lot on basic music fundamentals every day. And we put our music fundamentals with the body, put the body with the music fundamentals. It's, again, intentional decision making. And there's certainly plenty of schools that do really awesome work on all of this level. But we make that a part of every rehearsal. And I feel like if you drag some random kid in and go, "Hey, do you really do this at every rehearsal?" And they roll their eyes and go, "Yes, Mr. Seeley won't stop." And so we really do make the fundamental approach to the way the instrument sounds and the fundamental approach to the production of that sound and how the kid relating to their body. I mean, there's lots of groups dancing better than we are, but we're moving pretty darn well and pretty disciplined. And philosophically, we have always been about march and play. And, we were a little bit static in that video clip that you showed, but by and large, we are not static. We want the body to be moving. And I know the Avon folks believe in that philosophy as well. Matt will say, "Hey, it doesn't count if you're not doing it on the move." I totally believe that as well. Absolutely. But we need to be the best combination of musician and athlete that we can be, musician and dancer. But for the Hebron program, for us, emphasis on musician first. And so the sounds that we create, and by the way, those are acoustic sounds. There's a lot of technology out there and a lot of other stuff that you can use to enhance all of that, which is fabulous and great. And I know it's the way the universe is going. And I'm a dinosaur, but I want that sound to be acoustic. And I want those kids producing that sound as individuals.
Yeah, well, if you're a dinosaur, I'm a dinosaur. So we're dinosaurs together tonight. So when you say you do the fundamentals with the body, can you describe that to me? Is this part of your, like you're warming up, you're doing your fundamental training, and you have movement that you do to it? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, we're doing instrumental fundamentals, same kind of things, exactly the same kind of things that we do seated in the band hall in a tuxedo and a formal dress. The exact same fundamentals that we would be doing indoors, we're doing them outdoors with of course, you know, the world's doing step outs, but everybody's doing lunges with that, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing all of that while playing the music fundamentals with the same expectation. Not that we're there yet, but we're trying to have the same sound that we are seated with. Volume expectations are different, but you have to teach your kids how to play at that volume. You have to be the breathing concepts, the air support concepts, this is what I control, this is what my role model is for this sound. All of that is incredibly important because everybody can play loud. It's not how loud you're playing, it's how you play loud. Let me say that better because the kids always quote it back to me. It's not how loud you're playing, it's how you play loud that's important. And it's kind of an expectation of our activity. We understand that. Volume gets rewarded. Now, that's another conversation, whether it's good or bad. That's another conversation. But how you're playing the instrument, and can you hear the colors of that ensemble? Can you hear the woodwind choir in the midst of the brass? Can you read the transparency of those colors? Can you read the transparency and the priority of lines? That's everything to us that we're trying to do. And we work on those concepts and the double tonguing concept too. Absolutely. That's a part of what we're doing every day.
Okay, that was clearly my next question. So you're reading my mind here, Andy, because I was like, that tonguing, I mean, like everybody wants their brass to tongue like that. Is there any, I mean, is it just same process? Is there anything special that you're doing or any concepts that you can share with us? We all want our brass to sound like that.
Well, I'd like my brass to sound like that today, just so you know, hey, we got plenty to work on. But like everything else, for us, it's a grind, it's a process, it's a get in there and get dirty every day. And I want the kids, I think the one thing that really helps us with that is our kids geeked out at the opportunity to do all of that tonguing. Like, hey, they wrote this for us, we're going to digest this and we're going to do it. But we do a lot of it just tonguing, and we're working those musical concepts every day. And so, hopefully our basic brass pedagogy and our basic woodwind pedagogy is strong and solid, and we're sending those kids the right direction on all of these things and not asking them to do things that they can't do and that they're going to sound bad on. But the kids, they take pride in being able to do that. That's a badge of honor for those kids. They were those kids that were in that show. And it's also something that we work at every day. So you can't expect your kids to do things in performance that they've never done in rehearsal, and that confidence is born out of the ability to replicate excellence. It's not just a flash in the pan, although we all get lucky some days. And I'm certainly the poster boy for get lucky someday on that. But this is really what we do, and what we want to be about is the training, the musical training of all of that. And you have to keep working at it every day. There is no magic, or if somebody's got it, please share it so we can stop working so hard. But it's a badge of honor for the kids, and I'm so proud of them because they're not afraid to try. And when you try, you fail sometimes, but you dust yourself off, you try it again. And I'm proud of their resiliency through the pandemic side of that as well, but also on the day-to-day grind of do it right, do it better, come back tomorrow and we're going to do it better still.
Yeah, I love that concept of trusting your training. I've had that conversation with Scott Chandler of the Blue Devils a number of times, and he always mentions that, like, don't go out to that performance and try to do anything special. Trust your training. If you're nervous, trust your training. Whatever the situation is, know that you've put in the time. If you put in that time, you put in that work, then you're ready and you can trust it, and that's, especially when you're performing at this level. I think the same thing of an Olympic athlete or whoever else, like they know they're ready because they've put that training in, they have that time in. That's certainly the way your students are feeling. I want to ask you, the concepts you're talking about with the way you're approaching this, the way that your whole staff is dealing with this, knowing that your students know these are the concepts, this is the work, here's why we're putting the work in. how do you make sure everybody on your staff is on that same page? Do you guys have conversations about these things? Do you talk about the priorities? Like, how do you build that? Because I think a lot of times band directors don't take the time to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Well, I think you just said it. You have to take that time. And, you have to take that time with all of your auxiliary staff. You have to take that time with everyone that's going to be involved with your kids. Because there's nothing worse than somebody comes in as a high-end clinician or something like that, and their concept of what they want is so much different than the concept that you want. But yes, we talk daily. We talk between every class periods. We have a lesson plan for the class periods, and we revise it as the day goes, like, hey, this worked. Okay, we got 30 minutes before the next class. Okay, there's going to be 130 kids in this next class. Okay, so we got to do this differently. We're going to split the band like this. And we stay pretty true to that reflection and commentary. And, we have to trust our other staff members, which I do, Mr. Alsafar, Mr. Pruitt, about, hey, this is our expectation for these brass players and our woodwind players, and let's keep working. And so, yes, we do have to be on the same page. Yes, we do talk about it. Yes, we do refine and reflect and get back in there and try it again.
So I have a question for you. John Michael wants to know, hello there, I'm just wanting to know what and how Mr. Seeley is planning on topping Pinstriped. As that show was performed at such a high level, is now known as one of the best shows ever. Like, how could you top that? Sometimes, Andy, that can be a little bit, it can be, I doubt it is for your team, but it can be sort of paralyzing when you have something that's like a really big hit. And you're like, well, what am I going to do to top this? I know that you just keep going. But what would you say? Like, can you say anything about your plans, and how are you guys thinking about that?
Well, I think we have to think about it. And you and I talked about this just a smidge in the equipment test part of our pre-broadcast here, that you have to reinvent yourself every year. This is the band you have. This is the program that you have selected. This is how we move forward with that. And so the object is always to be the best version of ourselves. I don't know that the Pinstriped band was the best band we've ever had at Hebron High School, but I do know they performed the best under pressure and performed the most challenging material in the most successful manner under pressure. There's a lot of bands I'm proud of. And some days with the judges, you're the bug, and some days you're the windshield. And we were fortunate to be the windshield this year on that, but we've certainly been on the other end of it. And I talk to the kids pretty frequently about, hey, when you take risk over the course of your life, you're going to get disappointed about 50% of the time at least, and how you handle that disappointment and how you learn from it. And then as you're looking to go into the next season, you can't really compare anything to Pinstripe accurately. It's in my head every second. There is no doubt about it. It's in my head every second. It's in those kids' head every second. But you have to be the best version of that Hebron band that exists in that moment in time, with that show, with that vehicle, that instrument which you have selected to be your competitive program for that year. Some years, great decisions turned out great. Some years, yeah, man, I wish we'd done that differently. And you second guess yourself, but you can't go back. You can only go forward. And how you go forward and how you approach that design process and that thought process, and not about where we were, where do we need to be? Where do we need to go? And that really doesn't answer John Michael's question like he wants, maybe. Like, no, I'm not sharing any information. But philosophically, every year is a new year. Every band is a new band. There was a Hebron band long before Pinstripe. There'll be a Hebron band long after Pinstripe. What are you going to do with the one you got?
I love that. You mentioned that you felt like this past year's band performed really well under pressure. Do you have any sense of why that was? Like, was there something different? Was it student leadership? Was it confidence built from how hard the show was? Like, do you have a sense of why that happened?
Yeah, I do actually. They were determined. Their mindset as an organization was determined to make that show happen. They liked it, they bought into it, they saw the potential, and they just would not be denied the opportunity to perform it well. They would not tolerate that from themselves. So their expectation was good and appropriate. And that's a tribute not only to the leadership, but also to the senior class that was coming out of that pandemic and the senior class that we had spent so much time saying, no, your job is to position us for post-pandemic marching band, concert band, for post-pandemic Hebron band. What do we stand for? These are the things that we stand for, and we're going to stand for these on the other side of the pandemic, no matter who's with us at that moment. These are the things that we want to stand for. And I would just say to that, Tim, that those kids wanted that moment. They wanted that success. They wanted that validation. And again, you know, like I said, we're just so thankful to have shared that journey with them.
Yeah, it's amazing, you know, and you have over many years built that culture amongst your students so that they could do that. You know what I mean? Like that's a tribute to like the whole culture of the band over time. And listen, everybody, if you're watching this, that's not something you build in a year. You know, it's something that happens over time, and then the students perpetuate it. I love that you described it that way. And I got to tell you, Andy, like the way you described that makes perfect sense to me, because that's the way the show came off the field. Exactly the way you just described it. We're determined that we're just going to nail this. We love this. You can tell they love the show. You can always tell when a band loves their show, right? It's one of the most satisfying things is I love when I'm watching a band and I'm like, man, these kids are in love with this show. They probably couldn't wait to get to practice every day and try to get it better. That's maybe the most rewarding part for me, you know, is just we could tell the audience got that joy from the students.
We talk a lot about a couple of things that are related to that. Number one, that you're going to forget what the score was, but you're not going to forget how you felt performing and the people that you are around and share that moment with. You are not going to forget that. You're not going to forget in here what that means to you. I cannot forget that. I may spend the rest of my life trying to get that moment back, but I had that moment with those kids, and I can't have that moment again with those kids. It has to be created from the bottom up again. Secondly, in terms of the challenge of the show, physically or musically, I always tell the kids, you're not going to want to miss that moment. You're not going to want to have not played that moment in the show. If you dog it, if you lay out, if you know, I'll call them a wiener or whatever. Hey, if you're dropping out at that moment, you're missing out on what you're going to remember. You are taking away from the value of this communal experience. And it's a communal experience in music, which is what, you know, drives you and I. You know, the kids are driven by DCI and Instagram or whatever, but we're driven at least some part of our lives by the musical content of that. And maybe the visual guys feel the same way by the visual content of that. But me as a dinosaur band director, I want the musical content of that to be an emotional experience for the kids to perform it and an emotional experience for the audience to share it. Win, lose, or draw, let's go share that moment with the audience. That's the gift that we give to the audience. They may applaud, great. Judges may applaud, great. They may give us all bad scores, great. You share that with them anyway, and you will remember that moment and the people you were around in that moment and cherish it too.
You said that so eloquently. I listen, everybody, if you're watching the recording's always up the next day after these webinars, everybody. If you're watching the recording, you should rewind that last 4 minutes and just watch them again. because that was wonderful. Because Andy, like I've heard it said other ways. Like don't get to the end of your season and think, oh man, if we'd only gotten this a little better, how would I feel? And I love that you're talking about feelings, and not scores. That's what we're talking about with education. That's, like you said, that's what we remember. I can tell you, I don't even remember. I was in the Phantom Regiment for 3 summers, eons ago, everybody, and I don't remember scores. I don't even remember I'd have to stop and think where we placed at finals, but I remember being on the field with my friends and these musical moments when we're playing Spartacus. I was in the original Spartacus, and like we're playing these big, and I remember how I felt on the field, sharing it with an audience, playing with, like, that's the thing I'm never going to lose. I don't know. I don't even remember what our competitive placement was. I don't care at this point.
Yeah, I totally get that. And the kids talk about that, but not for many years. I'll get that from kids in the past. And we talk to them all the time about they're really standing on the shoulders of the generations of kids that have gone before them and sacrificed those blood, sweat, and tears to give them the moment, the opportunity to have this moment with these people in this stadium, with their parents. And that's the only moment they get. What they do with it is totally up to them, but they will remember that moment no matter what. And so we talk to them frequently, no regrets. And I know that's a very common thing, but the thing I add to it is leave nothing unsaid, undone, unplayed that you can control to make your experience fulfilling. And I do that as a director. I know that sounds really like pompous and philosophical, and I don't mean for it to be, but as a director, I really have to feel like I've done everything that I can do as the teacher, as the motivator, as the whip, as the provocateur, whatever role I'm having to play. That, am I putting those kids in a position to be successful if they choose, it's a choice, if they choose to take that opportunity. And as educators, we're not DCI, this is high school marching band. We're educators. The challenge for us is always to find a way somehow to align what kids are capable of with what they're willing to do. And marching band is a marvelous instrument for this. It's a lot easier for me to sell that than algebra, right? We've got that advantage. We've got that passion level that's different. We have a different investment in those kids because we go out and perform. They're not conjugating sentences or working equations too often in public the same way we are. But that also heightens the exposure, the risk, and trying to communicate and motivate kids. Hey, it's a short attention span universe out there, and it's all about instant gratification. And there is nothing about Pinstripe that's instant gratification. There is nothing about music that is instant gratification, especially music that is performed live, that is acoustic, that is human generated. And there's nothing that can substitute for that emotional high. And as you know, as a performer and as a teacher and in your current role, that's what keeps us in this business somehow, no matter what it is that high that we get from that process. But aligning what kids are willing to do and what they are capable of. And they so underestimate their capabilities, so underestimated. But they can be musical, they can be sensitive, they can be amazing, but it's a choice that has to be made.
And then you're setting them up for such success in life because you're showing them what they're capable of, and they're learning, wow, I can do more than I thought, and I have the stamina to work really hard for a really long time. You know what I mean? Like, those are tools. We talk about this all the time, but those literally are the tools that go and make them successful in whatever they're going to do. We are setting kids up for that. I just love with the way you're talking about this. And I got to tell you, Andy, I mean, it's so much fun to talk to great educators like yourself. Like, I'm having such a good time, and I love everything you're saying. It's so much fun. But my dream for the work I try to do here on the webinars and the podcasts and everything, like, wouldn't it be amazing if every educator out there of every stripe working with a marching band had that as their premises? let's work so that our students can have that amazing emotional musical experience with their show, with an audience, with each other. Like, what if that was the driving bottom line, as opposed to, are we going to win this show? Are we going to, how many points over here? And this judge might think that. And, it's such a different mindset. And you can tell, you can just tell.
Well, it's a wonderful vehicle for us as educators and musicians. Now, does it have a dark side? Sure, it's got a dark side. Is it 108 degrees on that pavement in Texas? 110, yeah. Oh, and our practice field faces the west sun in the afternoon. We're looking right into it. I mean, it is a challenging physical and mental environment every day. And shockingly, well, maybe it's not shocking, but that's the most important time of the year to the kids. They mostly couldn't care less what they play seated. There's only a few kids that really get into whatever extravagance we're going to try to play as a sit-down ensemble. And we certainly try to do wonderful literature with all of that. But for the majority of those kids, the social experience, the physical experience, the mutual goals and the community of marching band are so important to them. And that cannot be denied. We cannot look at music education in the United States outside of that lens. It's changing. Is it always changing for the better? Well, who knows, but it's changing, and we got to keep going and find a way to have standards and expectations and, at least in my opinion, relish the humanity of live music performed well in the moment. There is just no substitute for that connectivity, for that beauty. And we've all been in those moments where the kids are coming off the field in tears, or they're coming off, I just tell them, hey, if you leave it all on the field, I'll come get you. It's okay. I'll come out and get you if you left it all out there. But otherwise, leave nothing unsaid, nothing unplayed, nothing unexecuted that you have control of. Because you don't have control of the score that somebody writes down, and whether they like the show or not, and whether you're 50 points behind this group or whatever. No control.
Yeah. I love that marching band is all offense. It's one of my favorite things. It doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. It's all about what I'm trying to do with my group, with my show. All right, we have some questions that I really want to get to. I'm so enjoying this conversation, Andy. Thank you so much. All right, so here's one from Gregory. He wants to know, how do you prioritize what to address in show warm-up with such limited time? Do you just hit the focus of the week and really drill that in, or do you always try to hit every big moment in the show? Like, do you guys have a specific strategy for warming up before big performances?
Yes, I do have a specific strategy, and it changes with every performance. So there is a plan thing on that. I usually simplify our fundamentals so that we're spending less time. If you got 30 minutes or 40 minutes, and if you're in a BOA venue that's got a physical component to it, that's sometimes in different spaces, and okay, wow, we can't fit in this space, so we got to divide the band up 3 ways, 1 group in the hall, 2 groups in the rooms, whatever. What's our priority? What's our timeline for that? And yeah, I do think that we address things, we simplify our fundamentals. Number 1, right at the performance, we're doing the very basics, and we're trying to do them really, really well. I hit everything that I think is a problem for us, and I try to leave a couple of things that I think are good moments for us so the kids can play that moment and feel good. We try to give the soloist an opportunity to work just a little bit on their own, away from the band, whatever that is, in a warm-up situation. And then I'll tell them, hey, when you hear me play this, I need you back in place because I'm about to do this. And so I'll talk through that timeline with our leaders a little bit. I'll talk through Mr. Pruitt, who does the fundamental marching program. You've got this long to work on visual fundamentals, and we're going to play these things musically while that's going on, and then everything else we're going to do in the arc, but I'm going to do these things full out. And so there's a plan. I usually do that plan for like a prelims event. I'm doing that plan on the bus on the way there, prioritizing. I have this much time. I need the battery for this. I don't need the battery for this. I got to communicate with our percussion dude, Mr. Houston, and coordinate that timeline. I need the pit to work on this. Hey, will you make sure this frequency's got to work, dude? We got to have this soloist, that whole madness. And then if it's a prelims finals event, I'll try to listen to the most critical tapes, visual ensemble, music ensemble, if I can get some general effect listening done, and then we'll adjust what we can between prelims and finals. And sometimes that's a performance thing. Like, man, you guys laid a big egg right here today. We're going to revisit this right now. Remember how we approached this? Okay, take control of this moment. I don't get you more practice time. You've got to take control of this moment in the show. And ownership. I spent a lot of time talking about ownership. You have to own this music. You have to own this move. And until then, it owns you. And therefore, it doesn't happen. And so as an individual, and we really try to get a lot of kids playing the horn and a lot of kids marching the drill, you've got to own that moment. And how do you get that musical ownership? So yes, there is a plan there. Yes, it changes. And I'm talking to the staff. What can we manage? We can't make this change. Don't worry about it. We'll tackle that next week. That kind of thing.
I love that, man. That's something we can all use. Hope you guys all heard that. Like, you got to own this moment or it owns you. That is a really clear way of explaining moments that aren't working. I like that a lot. That's really clear. I like that. Okay, so this question you could probably talk about for about 45 minutes, and obviously we don't have much time, but maybe you can sort of give us a little nugget. Mr. Seeley, how can you talk a little bit about your approach to the middle schools, the feeder schools, and how that was built up? Clearly your feeder schools are doing a phenomenal job because they're feeding these musicians, are so great. But can you speak at all to how that works, or
yeah, we've been we have 3 dedicated feeders, or 2 dedicated and 1 majority feeder kind of situation for us. And we've been really fortunate over the longevity of the program to have really good teachers in those schools, really good fundamental teachers in those schools. And for those of you that are listening, and band directing is a hard gig no matter what, but the most important thing you can do as a young teacher, teach beginners, learn how to teach beginners, learn your instrument, spend time on your secondary instruments. So important. But we've been really fortunate in the long term to have good fundamental teaching. And there's been a variety of teachers through those schools over the years. And so there's been changeover, but we've had really good, fundamental, positive, engaged teaching going on. We have had, I know there's lots of places in the universe that don't have private lesson opportunities, but we're fortunate to do that, to have private lesson opportunities for our kids. And we try to offer some scholarship funding and all to help. But the middle school thing is so critical, and it needs to be, to the extent that it can be, and the extent that people are pliable, to be aligned with the expectations, the sound concept, the rhythmic vocabulary, the tonal acoustic approach to the instrument. All of those things need to be aligned philosophically. We do that in conversation. We do that in having clinicians that influence our programs that are all from the same tree or from a really similar tree of thought. And so we choose to make those musical priorities, those fundamental priorities, the same as much as we can across the vertical cluster. I guess up and down the vertical cluster, not across. Anyway, that would be my thought on that. But there is no substitute for those teachers at the middle school level, for the interaction and communication and reflection of those teachers, and for those teachers to have an expectation for themselves, for their kids, and for the interactions with the high school program and the high school kids.
Yeah, I love that. It's that communication, similar philosophy, having those conversations. That's really, really great. That's really important. Okay, one more question here. Can we get a walkthrough of when planning starts and how that process looks on their end? I think you mean like for planning the show. Can you give us just a snapshot of the timeline?
I can. I mean, I know this is, I wish we were is so organized like the drum corps world on all of this, and that had a cast of thousands that were planning this, a year and a half in advance or whatever. And they're meeting at Midwest, and then they meet the next day, and they meet the next day, and they have the storyboard. Man, we're just much more chaotic than that. The planning for this usually starts more in earnest. We don't usually get started on it until January, late January. And really, it's a chipping away thing, kind of for us. We always feel really far behind just because we are trying to be a little bit deliberate and feel good about what we're doing. At some point you have to take a risk. You have to take a leap of faith, like this is it. But in the Pinstriped case, we felt really good about 2/3 of that show pretty early on about our pathway. And then we changed the back third of the show completely. We changed the closer out completely late June. And we really didn't get music on it until September, really pretty close to September before we got the final product. Maybe third week in August before we got really closer music to be operating on, because we threw out the old closer and went to a new closer starting in about mid-June of last year. And then this year, we're just kind of plugging along on trying to get all of that organized. We'll try to have a little material for the kids right in our little mini camp that ends the year here in about 3 weeks. And we're usually, at least for us, we're not about releasing video hype and things like that. And it's not because that's not important and it keeps your kids energized. All of that's important. But for us, we're usually not far enough along to feel comfortable putting that out for public consumption until we really feel good about what we're doing.
Okay, because one of the comments here is, congratulations on a great year and a great show. Best ever for me, for this person since the 80s. So whoever Gregory is has been around watching a long time. Yay, good for you. And any sneak peek on the music for this fall? So clearly you're not going to be able to tell us anything, but I thought I would just read it.
Yeah, we're just not in a position really to put that out there yet. I mean, I think there are some things that are solid about what our intentions are, and then there's some things that are not solid about what our intentions are. So no point in doing a sneak peek now. The kids would have my hide if I told you before I told them. And so, we'll just try to keep working on that in the background, and try to make sure that when we do release that for the students, and it's really for the students' consumption, we won't put a big, Instagram post out there. We don't put a hype video usually. It's just, hey, well, this is what we're going to do. It's going to kind of be like this. Now let's go practice. Let's go learn our music. Oh yeah, let's get the fundamentals done. And then they roll their eyes at me and do it.
I love it. And of course, I know you weren't going to tell me, but I at least wanted the people watching to know that I tried for the. And here's a final comment here, not a question, but I just have so much respect for Mr. Seeley and his team. They are awesome. So you have a lot of fans out there, and it's well deserved. You guys are doing such great work.
Well, it's a total community effort for us. I get to be the one that's talking to you, but I have a great staff and I have a great administration and support of the school district. Most importantly, we have kids that are willing to do what needs to be done to be awesome. It's a choice that's got to be made, and our student culture, our parent culture, our band motto, all in, all the time. I'm wearing the wristband. I got it right here. It's the hardest thing in my life to live up to, is this wristband that says Hebron Band, all in, all the time. And it's the hardest thing in my life to do my job at that level and then turn around and expect my staff and my kids to do their job when we're together as a group at that level too. That's our band motto. That's our slogan. We paste it on everything, but we really need to believe that about our culture, about our program, about our product, about our community. And it's the hardest thing to live up to on the planet. And we keep trying every day.
Well, you're doing amazing work. I was going to ask you for final thoughts, but I think that you just wrapped that up so beautifully. I think that that's absolutely amazing, all in all the time. And that's certainly the experience I got from your students this fall and many other times too. You know, like the band's been amazing and I've enjoyed so many different performances. Um, Andy, this has been a complete joy for me. Like I've had so much fun talking to you. It's fun to talk about band. It's fun to talk about what we do. You know, you're doing such great work. So my hat's off to everybody on your team, every student, every parent. Um, they all were part of the worldwide reaction, you know, to what they did this fall, and I hope that they've all soaked that up.
You know, I think they have. They spend too much time on the internet. I'm concerned about this. They spend too much time on the internet. The world that we need to be on is the practice field and the practice room, but they spend way too much time on that. You know, you can't read your own press. You got to go do the job. And all of that press it's over. I mean, that was great. But if you wanted something like that again, you have to create it again. You have to start over. And it won't be the same set of students. We're losing valuable students. We're gaining valuable students, but it's not the same cast. And so what we make of that moment is critical. And I want the kids to be excited and interested and passionate about what they're doing. Absolutely. With the understanding, you start from ground zero every time and you got to go.
I love it. Back to work, everybody. I mean, that's it. You know, we're finishing the year. Let's all get back to work. You know, let's see what we can do next, to see what we can bring to those students next. Andy, you're doing such great work. Thank you so much for talking to me. This was really fun.
It was a great pleasure, Tim. Thanks for having me out. Thanks, Fred J. Miller Company, for having this opportunity for us. And we're so appreciative of that. And thank you for your kind words and kind sentiments, everybody. Let's go practice.
I love that. Everybody watching, if you thought this was a really great conversation, which it was, let somebody know about it. And remember, the recording is always up the next day, so they can, anybody that wasn't able to watch live can catch it. Andy, thank you so much for your time. You did a wonderful job.
My pleasure. Thanks, Tim.
Okay, thanks, everybody.